Hey everyone, welcome to Solving Quadratic Equations. This is Nicholas JMV. Okay, there are 5 videos that we're going to do, but we're going to start with square roots today. We're going to solve quadratic equations by square roots, and you'll see another series of videos on solving quadratics with factoring, completing the square, using the quadratic formula, and then even by graphing. So let's go ahead and look at our 2 examples. So when we solve quadratic equations, there's 2 really things that can happen. We can look at where the equation crosses the x-axis. That's if we set whatever we're solving for equal to 0. Okay, or we can excuse me, we can see where 2 different things intersect. So imagine this function 3x squared minus 7 intersects the horizontal line y equals 8. So we can think of it 2 ways, and we'll talk more about that when we graph. But let's solve this by hand algebraically. So I'm just going to rewrite 3x squared minus 7 equals 8. And the whole goal is to get x by itself. So I've got some other things going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and add 7 to both sides. It's an equation, so we got to keep it balanced. So I'm left with 3x squared equals 15. Well, that's multiplication, so I got to move the 3 over now. So I'm going to divide each side by 3. And so now I'm left with x squared equals 5. Okay, now this is where the square root comes in. Okay, the square roots, we're going to square root both sides, because when you square root a square, they really undo one another. So I'll be left here with x equals plus or minus root 5. 5 is a prime number, cannot be simplified, so that's it. You can check your work fairly quickly. Okay, we have our 2x values, so I could go ahead and set these up. Okay, or you would have 3 times some quantity squared minus 7 equals 8. Our 2 answers are plus or minus root 5. So plus root 5 here, minus root 5 here. Believe it or not, because you're squaring a number, the negative's not going to matter. I just told you how square a square root, that's going to undo each other, so you got 3 times 5 minus 7. Does that equal 8? Well, 15 minus 7, does that equal 8? Sure does. Here, same thing, 3 times 5 minus 7, does that equal 8? Absolutely. So our answers check out. So the answers are for x plus or minus root 5. All right, let's look at our second and final example. This one's got a little more to it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and solve 2 times the quantity x minus 3 squared plus 12, or equals 12, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my problem. Now the first thing I want to do is get rid of this 2, right? It's multiplied by 2, so divide this whole thing by 2, divide this by 2. And so now this becomes 1, so I'm left with x minus 3 squared equals 6. And now we come along and say, well, to undo a square, we square root. So square root, okay? Then you're left with x minus 3 equals plus or minus root 6, okay? Why is it plus minus? Well, think about it this way. If I said 25 equals some number squared, you could put 5 in there. That works, 5 squared. And you could also say negative 5. Okay, that's why you get that plus and minus. Okay, we'll talk more about that in class. So now I got to get x by itself. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So when I do that, I'm left with just x on the left. Good, I got my variable alone. And now I have just 3 plus or minus root 6. Okay, and that's that. So technically your 2 solutions there branch off into saying 3 minus root 6, and the other one would be 3 plus root 6. Okay, so that is how you solve quadratics using square roots. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. We'll see you next time.